Okay, this is the next video in our degree series. So we are in the 30 degrees of Aries, and this is the first degree of Aries, which means this is Aries at 1 degree. Aries at 1 degrees. And how would this differ from Aries at 0 degrees? Right? We talked about 0 in the symbology in the first video, right? And the power that comes with that. So the difference between 0 and 1, what's 1? It's all about me. 1 is the Aries. If you have to give a number to Aries energy in general, it's the number 1. It's the first house. It's the first house. So that 0 degrees point, we discussed that it was like a primordial kickoff point, that it was like the unmoved mover energy. Again, if you haven't watched it, you might want to go watch it, because you may have something at 0 and 1 degrees of Aries. You may have something at 0 degrees of Aries that squares something at 0 degrees of Aries in your chart, like the cardinal energies. So you kind of need to know the difference, okay? Because each degree does matter. And especially if you have something at 0 and at 1, because they're conjunct, that means they're together. So the difference between the 0 and the 1 is being totally 100% completely all about me. It may even be a little more focused on self, even though the 0 degrees in Aries is definitely going to be about self, but it was actually a little bit more complex than that, wasn't it? Yeah. So this one is really more about me, me, me. And so when we think me, 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 it becomes a little bit more physical, a little bit more tangible, a little bit more material, a little bit more of the here and the now. Knock on wood, it does still have to do with freedom, because that's the Aries energy in general. But that 1 degrees, think physical, think my body for sure. A big deal with the body itself. And what about the body and the appearance of my body? That's Aries. All about how I look and my appearance. You see, so there are some small details that make the difference between the 0 degrees and the 1 degree. And so 1 being self, being sure, it's going to maybe be a little selfish, maybe be a little self-absorbed, maybe be very assertive, of course, because we're still at 1 degrees and we're still talking about Aries energy, but taking action with my body. So it's really way more personal, really is more personal. And the 1 degrees being more personal, this can be issues about body autonomy, right? Like, this is my body. This is the space that my body is in. Don't speak for me. Don't speak for my body. Don't treat me a certain way because of the way I look. That's Aries energy, the appearance. And being the body, we have to include the head for sure. And when you have stuff and you have something at 1 degrees of Aries, and we think of the head, this can include even parts of the head. I've read in Aries energy, we think of the ram putting the head down and charging forward, but we can also think the eyes with Aries energy. Because if we have something there, I have a person's chart that I look at frequently, and they have Chiron at 1 degrees of Aries. So what do you think that means for them, right? Chiron, the wounds of the body. Chiron in Aries, wounds of the body, but wounds of the head. And they have a very sensitive head. Like, it's very sensitive, kind of like mine in a way, where I get cold. My head gets cold very easily. I have to always, it feels best to have something on it, and maybe even covering it. And we think of Aries as being very active and courageous, athletic, being the Marine. So when we think of that very militant energy, so if it's maybe somebody is literally in the armed services, law enforcement, right? Very, there's something about even the way they dress, even if they're not in the armed forces or if they don't serve in some way, with weapons and with, an organized group, right? Because there's a lot of different branches, whether it be Army, Navy, Air Force, right? All that stuff. But it can be a career. Firefighters. Fire. Aries is all fiery, for sure. Very action orientated, and it gets hot fast. It takes off like a rocket. So Aries at 1 degrees is definitely spontaneous and unpredictable. And the Aries at the 0 degrees, well, yeah, it's going to have a lot of those keywords, but it's a little bit different, right? The 0 degrees was just a little bit different. There's a little extra something there at the 0 degrees. 1 degrees is definitely more about self and definitely more about taking action and very impulsive, very impatient because we're thinking self. So very easily irritated. And when we're very easily irritated, we kind of pop off, whether it's in the mouth, but usually by action. And so Aries at 1 degrees need physical challenges, which means they are smart and they would do well by making sure that daily they create some sort of a routine, not a routine where they're doing things with other people, because this is very freeing energy. And when we are free, we're not slowed down by the presence of somebody else. We're not frustrated by I can't go because they're not going or they don't want to go or now they backed out. Oh, hell no, that's not Aries. Aries at 1 degree, I am doing this whether I'm doing it alone or not. I'm going forward and doing this. That's Aries energy. The first one out of the gate, even if it's going out alone. That's the Aries at the feisty, fiery 1 degrees. This energy needs to be cautious because it may start something, because this is definitely the starting energy, but it might not be real good with a follow through, right? These would be like excellent sprinters and boxers and fighters. And I say sprinting because it's not for the long haul. Remember, Aries energy is kind of like that rocket booster. It's a booster. The booster is not meant to be carried. Once they hit a certain spot, right, up there in space, they drop the boosters off. They're done with the boosters. They're used for a short amount of time. That's Aries energy. So I call it the sprinter and not the marathoner. So it's really good for the short bursts, right? And that's something important to remember because physically with our body, we may start strong and then find that we're struggling as we get halfway through. And we may not even make it 3/4 of the way through because it's like we've lost interest because 1 degrees, oh my God, the adventure of new, right? Never been there, never done that. It's very it does have this absolute adventure taste to it, a lot like Saggy energy, all about adventure. But Aries likes the challenge. It likes the physical challenge. And so does Saggy. But the Aries really feels like it's the pioneer. Where Saggy is like, well, sure, others could have been there and done that. It's more about depth and development with Sagittarius and the wisdom. Aries, oh no, it's a little bit younger. Okay, it's a little bit younger. And remember, when it comes to Aries energy, it doesn't matter with the age. I mean, sure, it can represent young folks, but at the same time, it can absolutely be somebody who's 60, 70 years old, whatever, but they still got something very youthful about them, something where they're still quite juvenile, where they haven't matured yet. And this energy likely takes a long time to mature. That can be physically, mentally, emotionally. And then that brings up the head again, because Aries being the head, the ram, and wearing a helmet, whether it's a military costume, I said costume, uniform. We think of people, firemen, like I said, and people who have to wear something, and they usually wear something on their head, don't they? Yeah. And there's something to that where it's uniform like, but it's also a protection of the head. It identifies, including the head and everything below it. And the head being that this is something that's being protected because it's it's still growing and developing, right? And that's important with Aries. It's really important. This is why the Aries energy, like the fine wine, doesn't develop until it's much older. So it's been around for quite decades, decades. Yes. So the head and learning it's not just about me. It has to be about the we energy, we. So taking action on self and being very self centered, self focused, seeming selfish and egotistical and full of pride and wanting to be first and combative, right? An instigator because he gets bored. Aries gets bored very easily. It's, when you see the Aries people, they're kind of like pacing. They can't sit still. Some people call it nervous energy. I don't know if I would say it's nervous energy so much as it feels like it's caged because it's not doing something. It feels like it should be doing something, you know? And so you can kind of see people sometimes where they're almost like, while you're talking to them, they're moving around, bebopping. And I know I tend to do this. I go from multitasking, doing different things. A little bit of my Gemini energy comes in. And so I try to multitask, right? But you kind of like you see that person and you're thinking, God, they're like a caged beast. They're like, they just can't sit still. Just chill. Can you just have a conversation and not move, right? But Aries is very active. And it's because it's got that pent up energy. So having activities, solo activities, because remember, this is an energy that can be very easily angered and frustrated. But when it's by itself, it has no one to blame but itself. So be mindful of that. Whether you're looking at somebody else's chart, a spouse, a child, be mindful of that. They need their time alone. Absolutely. Doesn't mean they need the whole day. They just, even if it's just 1 hour, right? First thing in the day, that's probably a good thing. That probably would help them. And you probably see it takes a bit of the edge off. And it's a healthy outlet, which is what you want. A healthy way to get out that assertive, aggressive energy where it's all focused on me and me being first. So it won't be so damn competitive and so, like it's a race type of thing. And yeah, feeling like nobody else. They just don't catch up. They're so slow. Like that's Aries at 1 degrees. So self taking care of self in terms of defending self too. 1 degrees of Aries. And so getting back to that example I gave of a person who had a Chiron at 1 degrees of Aries, those individuals, when someone says something to them or somebody gets too physically close to them, they're going to kind of feel like, whoa, back the hell up. This is my space. Like, I need this. And certain things that people say, they might feel threatened even, and they might get defensive. And what happens with especially Chiron stuff, you know, they're aware that the Aries energy that's rising up, the fire that's rising up, is probably going to burn somebody. It's going to open its mouth or it might take action and do some harm. And so sometimes they may not. And when they don't communicate in a clear, calm, kind way, they hold it in. And holding it in makes it worse because they get more frustrated. They get more angry. And that would be an Aries who's got a lot of other things going on because typically the Aries isn't going to be thinking and they're going to react. Very reactionary energy. Aries at 1 degrees.